Deborah Watson? Yes. Toby Watson.
You. To escape LA, we built our retirement home in Kauai Hills, which is incredibly rural. Maybe you don't even know what it's like. Previously, I've shown you 30 or more slides that very visually document what is going on with STRs in our area and their events. The party houses, resorts, mega advertise. They receive national and international press. Their events, mostly weddings, get more media, which then generates more media. Constantly, every weekend, November through May, the party houses hold events with 50 to 400 plus people, causing noise and traffic from many equipment rental trucks and party buses on days before, during, and after events, blocking our narrow roads, which party revelers speed down late at night. Finding loopholes, STRs operate like hotels, but evade codes, taxes, and other business regulations. This lucrative industry is growing. In international business magazines, Kauai Hills is now cited as a resort destination. Allowing STRs is antithetical to the December 10th, 2019 County of Riverside General Plan, Western Coachella Valley Area Plan, Kauai Hills Policy Area, which I will show a slide later. Some concerns mentioned therein: septic systems, sewage disposal, water usage. Continually, you have hundreds of people there on the weekends. Retain the rural character. Wildlife. We have bighorn sheep that go walking on our main road. I'll show you a slide. Resident safety. These events have truck-sized generators, lighting and sound systems, floor and table lamps. Cables are haphazardly strewn all over. Consider space heaters, hundreds of lit candles, and frequent large wind gusts. Who oversees fire safety? Because there is only one access road into Kauai Hills. Palm Desert Fire, or it was Riverside County Fire, prevented proposed lot splits in the mid-2000s. Years later, a house burned down. Narrow roads, fire hydrant, and water pressure problems exist. Can offshore corporations own STRs? Because we have that. For events, have they acquired legal permits, posted required bond, paid their mandated percentage of income to Riverside? The worst is Kempa Villa, one of Kempa Collection International Resorts. People magazine covered a recent wedding there, quoting the groom. It's like putting on a rock festival, he said about his booking of all the musical acts for 360 guests. They disdain residents, the community, and being cited. Your fines are nothing compared to the profits they're making in our R1 rustic area. Kauai Hills is not zoned for commercial use. Allowing STRs is a mockery of the Kauai Hills policy area. They exploit both loopholes and communities. They ruin the quality of life for your resident constituents. When I told one of your, and then thinking about safety, they pose threats to our safety when ambulance and fire trucks cannot access us. When I told one of your colleagues that I feel like I'm fighting for my life, he replied, "You are fighting for a lot of lives." If STRs contribute to injury, death, or property damage, can Riverside County be held liable? Would you like this in your neighborhood? Could you tolerate hundreds of people coming every weekend to your neighborhood on one road in? I can show you all of these slides. I can send a flash drive.
Thank you, Deborah.
Shannon Miller. Shannon Miller. Christina Fralick. Christina. John Meyer. John was given time from Mark Kolek. Mark, I see your hand. And Alice Meyer. Alice? Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is
John Meyer, and I'm a 22-year resident of Wine Country and a retired public employee with 33 years of experience in planning and redevelopment. I want to start by thanking staff, the Planning Commission, the Board of Supervisors, and everyone else who has put their time and energy into this process. In just under 15 years, the short-term rental industry has grown substantially to the point today where it's become a viable commercial segment unto itself. This segment includes mom and pops who rent out individual rooms. It also includes individual investors, real estate investment groups, and now corporate entities. We heard from the gentleman with Avonstay that on the Marriott platform, there are already 30 in Wine Country alone. It's clear that this growth has resulted in unintended consequences, requiring additional work to tailor regulations appropriate to individual communities and districts. In the mid-1980s, the traditional bed and breakfast industry was new and growing in popularity. There was significant concerns back then about the impact they would have on local communities and particular residential neighborhoods. Most local governments responded by requiring bed and breakfast inns to go through a traditional conditional use permit process. This allowed the governing body to see how an individual owner intended to operate their facility in a specific location and create a set of conditions to ensure that the public health, safety, and welfare was protected. That proved to be a successful formula and is still used today, including our own zoning ordinance 348. Over the past several decades, hundreds of thousands of dollars have gone into marketing Wine Country. As we've already heard today, the Wine Country Community Plan was adopted, and on the first page of that plan, you'll find this statement. These policies protect against the location of activities that are incompatible with existing residential and equestrian uses, which could lead to land use conflicts in the future. This policy document is now codified into county zoning ordinance. Cottage inns are conditionally permitted with a plot plan in the Wine Country residential zone. A cottage inn has already been defined earlier, but it's primarily owner occupied. This all seems very straightforward. We hear that the majority of problems are unregistered STRs. We believe the majority of the problems come from unhosted STRs. Now compare those existing zoning ordinance regulation to the proposed regulations that would allow 10 people in an unhosted 5-bedroom house. Common sense says the unhosted short-term rental has far more potential to create a nuisance to the neighborhood, and yet doesn't require the scrutiny of a plot plan, let alone a conditional use permit. So why would we adopt new regulations in a completely different ordinance that undermines the very regulations that everyone worked on so hard to put in place to improve and protect Wine Country? Here are my recommendations. Approve Ordinance 927 as presented. This will provide code enforcement with the tools to more adequately manage the short-term rental program. I would also encourage that the 50% of increases in TOT generation be raised to 75 to 80%. This will front load the code enforcement department to get ahead of this from the very beginning. I also support a second phase of review and regulations to recognize and distinguish the unique characteristics of various communities within the county and how they relate to these items such as saturation and caps, with specific attention requiring short-term rentals to be hosted similar to how cottage and country inns are currently regulated. Further, this phase 2 discussion should be structured so that both sides can sit down with staff and officials and have a true conversation. There's probably more common ground amongst the interested parties than people think. And lastly, put a pause on all applications to establish new STRs until this second phase of regulations is vetted and adopted. Let the existing registered short-term rentals operate under the new regulations, but do not allow more to be established in our residential neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Roy Holyfield. Roy was given time from Julie Condi. I see you. And Alex Holyfield.
All right, Dr. Roy Holyfield, Temecula. I think we can all agree that noise is a central theme in our discussion, so it makes sense that we need to do everything we can to decrease noise complaints. And how do we do that? Well, it makes sense again, we need to decrease occupancy. And, so that's why we're looking at occupancy. But the assumption here is that noise complaints are high in STRs. But we need to be smart about this. We need to make sure we have all the correct information. We need to evaluate the data. So, Mr. Washington, you would never fly your plane without knowing everything about that plane. It doesn't make any sense. You have to get all the data before you do that. Similarly, we need to know everything about the data with short-term rentals. So, compliments of vacation rental owner John Brown, we pulled up 4.5 years of Riverside County code enforcement data, raw data, which we looked at and evaluated. This is your data. This is not ours. Okay? In 4.5 years, there were 170 total complaints. 170. All right? 6 of those complaints were for noise. This is not my data. This is Riverside County data. 3 out of those 6 complaints were from short-term rentals. Just 3. And in Temecula, there was 1 complaint for a permitted short-term rental for noise. Just 1. I know that sounds crazy, but this is not my data, it's your data. All right, I can give that to you if you like. So conclusion with that, we are destroying tourism based on either true data or bad data. If this is true data, it makes no sense to make any changes. It's actually irresponsible to make a change based on this data, your data. Or it's simply bad data, and that's a possibility as well. And it makes equally nonsense to make a change based on no data, based on bad data. Doesn't make any sense. It's either true data or bad data. Okay, so conclusions. Making changes to, quote, see what happens according to the planning committee. Let's just see what happens, all right? Potentially destroys lives. That makes no sense. We don't just press a button on a plane to see what happens, all right? It makes more sense to reevaluate after the following. Number 1, better data has been attained by Decker and code enforcement. Number 2, non-permitted STRs have been addressed. Number 3, proper enforcement has been instituted with the present rules. You've actually done a pretty good job already. You just need to enforce it. All right, now, in case I'm not successful in getting you to not proceed, allow me to make an alternate occupancy proposal. Keep in mind that 10 there is no law, like the planning committee said, that 10 has to be the maximum. There's no law that says that. That's why they do it differently in San Bernardino, San Diego, Big Bear. There's no law that says that. The formula 2 per bedroom plus 1 works for the most problematic area of Idlewild, but it will be catastrophic for wine country as most properties are estate homes of around 4 bedrooms. 4 bedrooms, not 5, and a sparse number of 5-bedroom homes. Thus, the proposed maximum occupancy based on 5 bedrooms and 5 acres will still be quite limiting to occupancy and family gatherings. So here's what I propose after discussing with other owners. Adding acreage categories allows one to differentiate between properties such as Idlewild and Temecula. All right? The 2.5 acre range is key to allowing wine country family gatherings, as few homes are 5 bedrooms plus 5 acres. I've looked at that data too. You will destroy wine country if you do that. Okay? Please pull up the slide, please. All right? So, I made this slide up, try to make a point. So I know it might sound silly, suites and deluxe suites, but when you go on vacation, you're looking at a suite, a deluxe suite or presidential suite. And Idlewild is similar to the less than 2 acre category, but really, if we did it 1.5 acres, we would still cover Idlewild. Make that 2 per bedroom plus 2, and you'll get most of Idlewild. The deluxe suites, wine country, 2 to 5 acres, and probably 1.5 to 2 would be a better category, plus a minimum of 4 bedrooms, all right? This will allow wine country to survive, not 5 bedrooms. Maximum occupancy of 16. Less than 4 bedrooms and 2 to 5 acres equals 2 bedrooms equals 2 per bedrooms plus 4 max of 10. Now, other dwelling units on the property, if there's actually bedrooms on there, ADUs, they're bedrooms already. We can already rent those out. You can already rent those out. They're bedrooms. Treat them as bedrooms. Count them as the total occupancy. Then you have the zebras, the 14-acre properties. These should be treated differently than the other properties. These guys have invested a tremendous amount of money. They've been there for years, and you're trying it, and then they might get destroyed. Make them also 2 to 5 acres. However, they may ask for a special variance if they're greater than 16 using the formula 2 per bedroom plus 4. And again, ADUs on there should count towards the total number of bedrooms if you have one of those types of estates. Okay, so this formula should satisfy the overwhelming majority of idle owners and neighbors. It will also allow wine country to survive. 16 people on 2 to 5 acres, you don't even notice that barely, okay? And there is no data to not support that. Summary, making no changes is best until we have the proper data and proper enforcement, number one. Number two, if occupancy changes are made, they need to be much more reasonable, or tourism will suffer heavily, heavily if we just see what happens according to the Planning Committee. I thank you for your time, especially Mrs. Spiegel for asking very good questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Roy.
Lanny Swerdlow. Lanny was given time from Victor Michael. Thank you.
Lanny Swerdlow, RN, Whitewater, California. The short-term rental ordinance makes no distinction between owner-occupied homes that are renting a bedroom or two and STR homes that are not occupied by the owner, in which the entire home is rented out. The main problem with short-term rentals, as we hear from so many people here, are found to be STR homes that are not occupied by the owner, in which there are neighborhood disrupting parties and no supervision, as well as loss of available housing. People renting 1 or 2 bedrooms in an owner-occupied STR home will have no effect on the availability of housing. As for loud parties and other associated problems with homes not occupied by the owner, this is not going to happen in owner-occupied homes, because we don't want loud, raucous parties with dozens of people in our homes. As for requiring an indoor, so what I'm asking here is I'm asking that single owner-occupied homes be treated differently than non-owner-occupied homes, which is not done in this ordinance. They treat us all the same. There's things here that just don't make any sense. As for requiring an indoor and outdoor noise detection device, if the owner is living there, you don't need it. The owner is the noise detection device. So why require a person who's living in their own home to have one? The ordinance requires mandatory property inspections where county staff will call the short-term rental operator at an unspecified time. If the operator is not available to meet at the property within 1 hour of receiving the call, the short-term rental application will be denied. I am an RN. That's why I wore my outfit here. And I do not work at home during the day. It is unlikely that I would be able to respond within 60 minutes of a call. Further, the ordinance requires a written notice delivered to all property owners within 300 feet of the property. That is the length of a football field in every single direction around the house. Owner-occupied STR homes will not be the ones causing the problems that reasonably require notification of neighbors. We should not be made to suffer the consequences of actions of STR homes that are not owner-occupied. Further, the ordinance proposes draconian fines of $1,300, $3,000, and $5,000. Let me make this point, and please pay attention to this point. Owner-occupied STR homes are not making a fortune renting out a bedroom or two. They are making some change in order to help their living costs. STR homes that are not owner-occupied are making a king's ransom, as their rental rates will bring them a hefty return on the hundreds of thousands of dollars they have spent and invested in these homes. This ordinance needs to recognize the enormous financial difference. Thank you for coming back. I wish you could have heard what I was saying in the beginning. The same with
microphones in the hallway.
Oh,
Yeah, we're
Okay.
always listening to you.
Okay.
Yeah,
The enormous difference in the money made between the two. This also goes for the licensing fees. They should recognize the difference as well as with the different fees for owner-occupied homes and those that are not owner-occupied. The fee should be different, the fine should be different. We don't make the money that homes that are not owner-occupied make. Except for the hotel industry that does not want any STRs anywhere, no one has any problems with owner-occupied STR homes. I ask that you table this ordinance and direct the planning staff to write an ordinance that differentiates between owner-occupied ST homes and STR homes that are not, similar to the ordinances in Cathedral City and La Quinta. As the planning department has been tone deaf on this issue, I also request that you form an ad hoc supervisors committee to oversee the development of an ordinance that treats owner-occupied STRs differently and fairly than owner-occupied, than homes, STRs that are not occupied. Talk about something. Thank you very much.
Thank you for successfully juggling those acronyms. That was very good. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Dane Griffith. Dane will be followed by Joseph Messina or Messine.
I'd like to use my time today to request that we revisit the language around second dwellings and ADUs, especially for owner-occupied properties. My wife and I were able to make our dream a reality about 4 years ago to move our family and our business to the mountains. And one of the reasons we were able to do that and purchase our first home is because we found a property that had multiple dwellings that were all built well before 2017 and had a history of successful short-term renting. And we knew that with that additional revenue, we would likely be able to offset our expenses enough to make it work for us financially. Since moving to town, we've been able to grow our primary business. We've opened up a shop in town. We have been able to employ over 20 people, which we're certainly very proud of. But most importantly, we've been able to maintain a quiet, peaceful atmosphere at our property. And the reason we've been able to do that is because we rent these dwellings out separately to 1 or 2 people who are coming to the mountain for a peaceful getaway. And we have the support of our neighbors, of our community, because we're there and we do it right. We're hosting the property. And so I'd like to request that we revisit that before passing anything through and taking into consideration hosted properties and whether or not we can rent these spaces out. So many people like ourselves have invested their entire financial future in properties like this, especially in places like Idlewild, where you do have these historic properties with multiple dwellings. We've invested a lot of time, effort, and money into making sure that the experience is amazing for our guests, that we are accommodating our neighbors and our community and creating this peaceful, amazing, serene atmosphere that we all love about Idlewild. And I'd hate to see that go away. I'd hate to have to move out of town, pull my business out of town, because if we can't rent these spaces, I don't think I'm going to be able to do it.
Thank you, Dane.
Joseph. Joseph will be followed by Karen. Dylan.
My name is Joseph Messin. I'm the on-site director of the University of California Emerson Oaks Reserve outside the city of Temecula. These views are my own and do not represent the university. My wife, young children, and I reside on the university property. 2 rentals are adjacent to us, one accessed by the abuse of an easement through the reserve. My family has been subjected to the absolute worst behavior imaginable from guests of these rentals over the past several years. This includes noise from things like weeknight wedding receptions, late-night party buses, and loud, obnoxious guests. Trash is often dumped on the property, and our dumpster has been filled many times. Guests have been caught trespassing and riding OHVs on the reserve. I've witnessed drunken behavior, including arguments and fights, obvious cases of driving under the influence, and even have guests urinating on the university property. Additionally, guests are often caught violating basic motor vehicle laws and drive off the road, destroying protected habitat. Almost all these incidents captured on security cameras and notified to the county. As bad as that is, I've also been subjected to threats like being verbally assaulted by a mob of over 20 intoxicated guests. Host Avonstay's response to this: people come here to party. I hope you learned to stay out of their way. Both an Avonstay manager and property owner have defamed me to the university in pathetic attempts to bully me into not reporting the actions of their clients. This Avon State manager currently awaiting sentencing for unrelated federal bribery charges. Just examples of greedy, unethical people willing to do anything to make a few dollars. While I'd like to see all short-term rentals banned throughout the county, I know this is not going to happen. Approving the updated ordinance 927 is a step in the right direction. Of course, this is useless if not enforced. If the county doesn't take these issues seriously on a school, what chance do these residents have? Thank you.
Thank you.
Karen?
Good afternoon, everybody. My husband and I have lived in Temecula wine country for 25 years, and we've worked for 39 years both to have our home. It's not a fancy home, it's a ranch-style home. Short-term rentals are a violation of the wine country community plan. Look at the wording. The only thing that it mentions is that any lodging should be attached to a winery based on the class of winery, and that's regarding country inns, etc. The only thing it mentions is the cottage inn, and that has to be by a plot plan. There's no mention of short-term rentals. I believe any lodging should be attached or in close proximity to the wineries for safety. People are out there driving, intoxicated. They take away a homeowner's right to safety and quality of life. Due to the growing issues with short-term rentals and the severe lack of housing stock in California, we should return to a majority of long-term rentals. This is a win-win situation. More available housing, and investors can still supplement their income. May not be as lucrative, but it's not off the homeowners' backs. Homeowners have spoken loud and clear, as you have heard. We come first. There are numerous bans or severe restrictions of short-term rentals in many areas. I have done some data myself. San Diego short-term rentals were just cut in half and using a lottery system. City of Temecula, Canyon Lake, and Norco have a ban. The beach cities, well, it is 7 of them, have banned them, including Calabasas, Beverly Hills, and Sausalito. Malibu is hosted only. Burbank and Glendale are looking at a ban. South Lake Tahoe, they are banned outside the tourist core. Napa County banned them, and they are very limited in the city. I would like to mention something that I think is very important. I don't know if anybody's asked.
One sentence.
Okay. It's regarding the noise ordinance. No one has spoken to the second part of the noise ordinance. It says.
Okay, so I said one sentence, but here we go.
Yeah, here we go. But also at any other time than nighttime, it should only be audible to the human ear at a distance not greater than 200 feet. All residents should be aware of that. There is a noise ordinance during the day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Neil Lohner. Neil was given time from Victor Ruiz. Thank you, Victor. And Adriana Leona. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I was asked at lunchtime to deliver a speech from our friend George Husser. But before I do that, since I'm up here, I'd like to give you a little information about myself and what we do. Myself and my partner, we've worked very hard to afford to buy a few short-term rentals in the area. We employ roughly 40 people in the Coachella Valley full-time. And yeah, so I guess I just had a few points on occupancy and introduce myself. So right now we live in we're 2 families living together because we have relatives from Ukraine living with us. So there's 4 adults, 4 children in a 3-bedroom home. In order for us to go on vacation, if the new ordinance is passed, we would have to rent a minimum 4-bedroom home. We're quite comfortable in the 3-bedroom. And a lot of the listings in the county are 3 bedrooms. There's not a lot of the bigger estate homes available, so it'll really harm those operators who have the smaller homes. And I guess with the With the occupancy, the requirements under which properties under 5 acres to increase occupancy to 16 have not been disclosed by the planning department to today's date, despite repeated asks. In fact, planning said it might be too cost prohibitive. Also, this ordinance went through commissions, 2 votes, even planning did not have it. And many of the rural lots where we're at are listed at 4.95 acres, 4.78. So we're just, concerned about the 5 acre cap on things. That being said, I'll get to what George left me. I've been a small business owner for 20 years, the last 13 of which have been right here in Riverside County. In addition, I hold a full-time job as an engineer and spend most of my days parsing through tons of data points. Contrary to what some may think, owning and operating vacation rental is not something reserved only for wealthy investors, but rather most of us ordinary, hardworking folks who've made thoughtful decisions to reinvest in our communities. My wife used to commute 20 hours on the road per week from Temecula to a full-time job in San Diego. We relied on babysitters to raise our girls, as I was often on business trips. When her disabilities prevented her from going through a daily grueling schedule, we had to come up with a new plan that would allow her to utilize her skills and talents while caring for her health and our family. So about 6 years ago, we took every penny of savings we had, including college funds that we had set aside for our girls, and started managing vacation rentals. And eventually, by the skin of our teeth, we qualified to purchase a home in wine country. This was my American dream, which attracted me to the United States in the first place. The proposed changes would diminish and ultimately destroy our family business and that of most responsible family-owned vacation rentals in the county. The proposed ordinance 927.1 will create unique burdens, cause irreparable financial harm to hundreds of responsible short-term rentals, aka small family businesses alike, like ours included, their employees, service providers, and ultimately, I dare say, the tourism industry in general. We have all invested quite heavily in the revenue from which our county and communities rely so dearly on. So we would respectfully ask and plead with the Board of Supervisors today to not sign the revised ordinance 927.1 in its current written form without doing more research. We ask that you grant all stakeholders a voice that will give rise to a solution that results in either better enforcement of the existing ordinance or a common sense amendment. Thank you for keeping our Riverside vacation communities alive.
Thank you, Neil.
Jeremy Ogle. Jeremy will be followed by Dan Stevenson.
Good afternoon, supervisors. My name is Jeremy Ogle. I'm speaking on behalf of Expedia Group, which includes the vacation rental hosting platform Vrbo. Expedia Group has partnered with many cities in California, including several here in Riverside County, to assist in the implementation of fair and effective short-term vacation rental ordinances and policies, and we're looking forward to doing the same with Riverside County through this ordinance. As you're probably aware, Section 6C of this ordinance describes how county staff will coordinate with hosting platforms such as Vrbo to ensure that only permitted short-term rental properties are allowed to advertise and do business on our platforms. This coordination between county staff will help us prevent and eliminate the operations of unpermitted short-term rental properties. I want to thank county planning staff for meeting with us, listening to our concerns, and incorporating our recommendations for ways to clarify and strengthen this ordinance. Most of the issues we raised early in the process have been addressed in this latest draft ordinance. There is one section of this ordinance that could use some additional clarification. That's Section 11C, which provides a list of possible violations of the ordinance. We agree with the recommendation of Mr. Hildebrand during his presentation this morning, which is to clarify that responsible operators are the party responsible for complying with section 11C.6 and 11C.7. So we ask you to incorporate Mr. Hildebrand's recommendation regarding 11C6 and 11C7 into your action today. Thank you for considering our perspective. Thank you for your service to the public, and thank you. I'm available to answer any questions or provide any further information.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Dan Stevenson. Bill Wilson.
Can I get his extra 30 seconds if he gives it to me that he left? Phil Bailey's?
I don't think so. No.
Don't think so?
But
I don't think I'll need it.
you can get across. I'm sure you
All
can.
right. Well, first of all, I agree with Phil. Wine Country, I'm Bill Wilson, Wilson Creek Winery. I own a bed and breakfast in Wine Country, and not a bed and breakfast. It used to be. Now it's a vacation rental. I also own one in Lake Havasu. So it's true and dear to my heart. It's good operators are good operators, bad operators are bad operators. You've heard that over and over and over. I'm not here to belittle that fact. I did bring some statistics for you. In 2014, there was $1.4 million generated in revenue from vacation rentals. This year, $57 million will be generated by vacation rentals, just in the vacation rentals. Do your 10% TOT tax. You've got plenty of money to code enforcement and to make sure that our neighbors and our residences are safe, period. However, they don't do anything to do agriculture. I'm all about agriculture. Let's plant some vineyards on some of these acres. You saw some of the homes, sprawling acreage, no vineyards. Let's make it wine country. I'm speaking on behalf of Wine Country. Idlewild, they probably have trees up there. So anyway, I don't want STRs to be termed as an STD. We don't like STDs. Let's like STRs, okay? So with that, you've got the fees, you've got the teeth. Let's keep Temecula wine country. Let's keep it, it's really good for business. But I do want to say that this last year has been a really crazy year. It's not the norm. Somebody came up and talked about that. Pre-2020, we saw none of these problems. It's kind of the nature of the beast. So hopefully it's back down to just normal crazy.
If you were going to be that entertaining, I would have given you 30 more seconds. But no, thank you, Bill.
I have Chuck Tobin.
They say it's always bad to go after a good act. So
Just raising the bar.
very quickly, 3 points. I'm here to represent Cole and Tracy Burr, who live on Deep Portola in the equestrian district of Wine Country. The 3 points are, first, we'd very much like to thank the board for the support it's given to code enforcement to date. Mr. McGee and especially Ron Welsh, who has been very effective in terms of trying to root out some of the illegal operations. So you can't give code enforcement enough money to continue along that pathway. Second thing is, we think there's still a legal issue that needs to be addressed between the proposed 927 and the existing 348, which is the Wine Country ordinance. In two areas. One with respect to ADUs, accessory dwelling units. We have received an opinion of staff that ADUs cannot be converted to STRs. But that's come from staff. We'd like to see county council's opinion on that topic. The second is there's still this fundamental question as to which ordinance would take precedence. If we believe if 348 is the one that's the top dog, that will in essence ban STRs in the wine country. So we'd like to see a legal opinion from county council as to, on that specific. So there.
Thank you, Chuck.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I have one speaker, Tom Ryan, who is on the phone line. And as I've done in the past, I still would like to go through the people that I called just to make sure they're not here in the audience, they didn't step out. And then that will finish up the speakers on this item.
Keisha, let's go ahead and do that.
Let's do that. So when I finish reading the names, then we'll go to Tom Ryan, who's on the phone line. I called before Toyin, and I'm sorry, I know I'm butchering the names, Toyin Druno Jr., Nathan Jorge, Julia Jorge, Jalen Span, D. Harvey, Kim Last, Shannon Miller, Christina Falick, Bob Hensley, Carrie Jensen. You're here.
Okay.
You did give your time to Jonathan Seal, and so did Bob Hensley, only I never saw a speaker card for Mr. Seal. That is where the confusion. Would you? So we have Mr. Seal and we have Mr. Ryan, and that is all that I'm aware of who still need to speak.
Okay, let's go ahead. We'll take Mr. Steele first.
Mr. Seal, thank you.
Hello. I must admit, when I came here this morning, I thought I was prepared and I knew all the issues that we were going to face. However, I have been, clarified in many ways by the speakers here. I live in the wine country off the end of Calle Contento. There are 4 STRs within 600 feet of me. That's 2 football fields. One of them, I can be on the phone on my patio and look at them, and the person to whom I'm speaking can hear the noise 600 feet away in my phone. That's how sound carries in the wine country when it's quiet at night. This has been a continuing problem. I have first-hand communications with the owner and the operator. He's pretty good. But at 10 o'clock at night, I don't really want to have to call him up so he can call his assistant, who can then call the people and tell them to take it inside. It's a circular motion, be that as it may. The part of this system that seems to be broken is that way back in the good old days of 1990, I think Mr. Washington was probably around then, when 348 was passed, the wine country overlay, all that good stuff, which specifically allowed for, as we know, inns and bed and breakfasts. Hosted, that was the only use of a short-term rental of any kind in the wine country. That ordinance still exists. And I would like to ask the 5 of you there why it is not being enforced and why you've now decided to bring out a whole new ordinance when you have a perfectly good one already existing. Can anyone answer that question? Apparently not.
Yeah,
it's not Q&A?
Yeah.
But if I gave you my email address, maybe you could write me an email to explain what the county's been doing since the early 1990s as to why this ordinance is not being enforced. Because obviously it isn't. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here today, would we? Doubtlessly. Now, let's proceed past that point. The noise ordinance, the noise is the issue. Traffic is a byproduct, but noise is the basic issue. The noise issue as you have it written in the current proposal is kind of cool. 45 decibels during the night, 55 decibels during the day. Wonderful. The people that come up from the STR side of things and announce that they've got noise meters is basically a crock, if you'll excuse my French. A noise meter, by definition, most of them, their threshold is 75 decibels. It won't trigger the alarm below 75. Now, 75 decibels is, according to many surveys, is like standing 25 feet from the freeway at 10 o'clock in the morning. That's 75 decibels. That's not 55, is 1/16 of that volume. So just think about that. Would you allow that a volume of noise in your house all the time? No, obviously you wouldn't. You're thinking, caring people. However, the ordinance as it's written, and with regard to these noise alarms, shall we say, that are proprietary, there are many ads for the STR industry who can, for these networked noise monitors. You got 10 properties? Hell yeah, we'll sell you 10 of these things and you can listen to everybody all day long. The threshold is 75 decibels built into it. That's right on the graph that they give you. So they're actually worthless with regard to the noise ordinance as it's written by you guys. The noise ordinance is good. The numbers are good. The distances are good. However, the enforcement of it, as we know, has been problematic in the past because the poor code enforcement guys don't have the equipment. I don't know how many noise meters they have in the county. They're not enough. Getting back to, that's a noise ordinance. The other part of this whole thing that sort of, I guess, woke me up was the instances of, excuse me just a sec, I'll take a couple of seconds here to read my notes. Got that one? Got that? Oh, that's right, here we go. The TOT tax, it's announced in the ordinance that 50% of the increase of the TOT tax from 2021 forward will be handed over to code enforcement. Well, guess what? The only way, therefore, that can increase is if you increase the number of STRs. Well, that's a